Hey everyone, we are going to go over your discussion board 2, which is very different than your first discussion. This one has more targeted questions and more targeted peer responses and a more thorough rubric. So I decided that hopefully this visual will help you as we go through this. So the first thing is you've got some instructions on here. Um, I'm going to just kind of move this down so you can see everything. Um, you essentially have 3 career-based story paths. You only choose one. You don't have to do all 3. So you can either look at a hospital operations manager trying to reduce patient wait times. You can be a cybersecurity analyst investigating a data breach, or you could pick the retail manager testing a new customer loyalty strategy. So what you will do is you'll click on this start button and it will take you to the scenarios that you want to choose. If they do not work, you can just click on this PDF and it will actually give you all 3 scenarios. So I'm just going to kind of show you what that will look like. Hopefully, if my screen is working correctly. Um, so we're going to go ahead and go, there we go. Oh, I'm in unit 1. Sorry about that. That's not where we want to be. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the start button. So you can see, right, you've got the waiting room. So this is the hospital administrator. This is the cybersecurity analyst, and this is the retail manager. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this, and what it'll read through the story for you. Um, what you are really going to want to pay attention to is, how did the character apply the steps of the scientific method? So as this goes through, it'll tell you like the hypothesis. Um, it'll talk about the data collection. And so you want to be able to answer all of or identify all of these through the scenario. So here's her uh, you know, her hypothesis that she's doing. Next, it'll go into, what data she collected or, the experiment that was performed. And then, it'll go into the analysis, conclusions, things like that. Um, so it'll go all the way to the end. Again, if this goes too fast for you, I also don't know. I think I've tried to click on it after it has played, and I think you have to like get out and then get back in again to replay it. So that's where this PDF can help you because it just already has everything written out. So like if you miss, like the conclusion part, you could go into this PDF and find it. And it goes through all of the stories. So that's just to help make life a little easier. Or, if you're more of a reading person versus like watching a visual, then this can be helpful as well. So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. And what I have done for you is I've given you a sentence stem to help you cover everything that this particular discussion board is asking for. So the first part is kind of a multi-part question. So you state what path you chose, which one of these 3 scenarios you chose, and then you're identifying how the character applied the steps of the scientific method. So the problem they were trying to solve was, the hypothesis was, the data that was collected, the conclusion that was reached. So you have to include all of this in here. And, like I said, it may take you watching that video a couple of times or just using the PDF. It just depends on your learning style. Now, the second question says, how could you apply the scientific method to solving problems in your current job or daily life? Describe a real or hypothetical situation where you could use observation, hypothesis testing, and analysis to solve a problem. What would your experiment look like? So you could start it off by saying, I use the scientific method in my job by, or my daily life by. Now, you can see here in red, right? We are not using AI for this, okay? Whenever you take something that was AI generated and you just plug it in, that is considered plagiarism. I want to hear your own unique experiences. If you do have to use any outside sources, you should just list them at the bottom of your post, and that will be okay. Typically, whenever AI generation is used or outside sources are used and not cited, that makes your similarity score jump really high, and you'll be hearing from me. So your similarity score needs to be below 10%. Anything above that is not good. You're going to have to redo it, and we'll automatically get a 0, and I'll send you a message saying, hey, this similarity score is too high. You need to redo this, and make sure that it's below 10%. So with that in mind, like whenever I have plugged these things into like ChatGPT or Copilot, typically it's pretty easy to spot when you have also done that, because most of the time, it comes up with things like, oh, my sleep schedule is how I use the scientific method, or my phone is broken and how to fix it, or variations of that. Schedule for your school. So don't use those, because those typically indicate that some type of AI generation was used. Pick something that is unique to you, something that you actually use the scientific method to help solve a problem. The last one is about whether you're surprised or not about using the scientific method in your daily life. Now, you can use these sentence stems if you want to. If you want to copy and paste them to help you with your post and make sure you're not missing anything, to help you with your organization, that is completely fine. I highly encourage you to do that. So here is an example of a really good post that covers everything. This is my instructor post. Now, I didn't do the scenario part, because I felt like that was kind of giving away answers. So this is just like part 2 and part 3. So you can see, right, like I've covered everything. I've talked about, my hypothesis, because I have like an immune condition, what conclusions I was able to draw. I also gave kind of another example of how I use the scientific method. So I gave kind of like 2 examples here, and then I talk about whether it was surprising or not. So you can model yours after mine, but, typically these discussion board posts are going to have, a couple of paragraphs that you're writing. Now, the second part of the discussion is your peer responses. So you should have 2 peer responses. They're due by Saturday. 50 to 100 words, should be substantive and encourage interaction. Substantive means they have substance to them. They're not like superficial surface level stuff saying like, oh, I liked your post, good job. Like, that's not substantive. That's also not encouraging any kind of interaction. So what you really want to be able to do is, in your peer responses, you want to ask questions. You could give links to things. You could give new ideas about stuff, but it's something that is encouraging them to interact with you. So I've given you an example of a bad response and a good response. So in this one, right, there's no substance to it. They're just saying, hey, great job talking about the cybersecurity scenario, listing how you use science at your welding job. I like that you had the steps of the method and how you discussed that you were surprised that you used science. I was surprised too. So there's nothing substantive about this, right? It's just surface level stuff. Nobody's asking any questions. Nobody's like trying to further the conversation. Whereas this response, it's okay that they're telling them, hey, good job. I think it's interesting that you chose the health administration scenario. They give them kind of like their personal experience, and then they ask them a question, and then they also have included a link for them to kind of look at, to an article. So this is a really substantive response. So this is the type of response that you want to have. Even if they didn't include the link, right? Even if they just asked the question, that is still good because it encourages interaction. Like their peer could respond to this, right? Whereas there's not really anything on this side to respond to. Like there's no question to answer or ideas to discuss here. Um, so that leads us to your rubric. So this is how you're scored on this discussion board. So the first two parts are for your initial post. So it says post demonstrates understanding of the scientific method by accurately identifying its steps and explaining how they were applied in the chosen career scenario. So again, you're stating, which one of those three scenarios you chose and what was the hypothesis, the problem, the data collected, the conclusion, right? So you're identifying all those steps. That's where that sentence stem can really help you out. The second part, post connects the scientific method to the student's own job or experiences, offering thoughtful examples of how scientific thinking could be used to solve real world problems. So this is where you have identified how you use the scientific method in your daily life, and what you hypothesize, what data you could collect, what experiment you could do, things like that. The next part is your responses, right? Respond substantively to two posts. Response encourages interaction in the discussion board and classroom community. So we already kind of went over that. You get points for organization, so making sure everything's kind of organized and is logical, relevant to the discussion topic. And then you also are assessed on your grammar and spelling. Honestly, I would take your discussion board posts and write them in like a Google Doc and do spell check. That way it will automatically, check it for you and tell you how to fix it if anything's wrong. So that way, you don't lose any points on this. If you have any questions, though, you can always reach out to me through Ctu Messenger. You can email me. I'm more than happy to help. There's also resources in the class announcements that can help you as well. So make sure you always check those. And I look forward to reading your work.